I stood at the altar in my white dress, looking into the eyes of 300 guests, and hit play on the recording that would destroy everything. My fiancé's drunken voice filled the church speakers, laughing about the girls he planned to screw on our honeymoon. The color drained from his face as his mother gasped in the front row. Let me take you back to where this nightmare really started. 3 months before what should have been the happiest day of my life. I was 28 years old, living in Chicago with my fiancé Marcus, planning our dream wedding at the historic Riverside Chapel. We'd been together for 4 years, and I genuinely believed I'd found my forever person. Marcus worked in finance, came from a good family, and everyone told me how lucky I was to be marrying him. The wedding planning consumed every free moment I had. I worked as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized firm downtown, but my evenings and weekends belonged to cake tastings, flower arrangements, and seating charts. Marcus seemed less involved than I'd hoped, but his friends kept telling me that was normal for guys. They'd say things like, "Oh, Marcus is just letting you have your day," or, "He's excited, he just doesn't show it like you do." I wanted to believe them because the alternative was too scary to consider. Our relationship had always been good, or at least I thought it was. We had our fights like any couple, mostly about stupid things like whose turn it was to do dishes or whether we'd spend holidays with his family or mine. But we never went to bed angry, and Marcus always knew how to make me laugh when I was stressed. He'd bring home my favorite Thai food without me asking, or leave little notes in my work bag that said things like, "You've got this, babe." Those small gestures made me feel seen and loved. The engagement itself had been perfect, exactly what I'd dreamed about since I was a little girl. Marcus took me to Navy Pier on a summer evening, right at sunset when the whole sky turned orange and pink over Lake Michigan. He got down on one knee by the Ferris wheel, and I ugly cried so hard that tourists started taking pictures. The ring was beautiful, a simple solitaire diamond that caught the light in the most amazing way. I called my mom immediately, and she cried too, saying she'd always known Marcus was the one for me. Planning the wedding brought us even closer, or so I convinced myself. We'd lay in bed at night looking at Pinterest boards and talking about our future. Marcus wanted 3 kids, a house in the suburbs with a big backyard, maybe a golden retriever. I wanted all of that too, plus a career I was passionate about and the kind of marriage where we'd still hold hands when we were 70. Everything felt aligned, like we were building toward the same beautiful future together. His friends were always around, which sometimes annoyed me, but I tried not to make a big deal about it. There was Jake, his college roommate who worked in the same firm, and Tyler and Brad from his gym. They'd have poker nights at our apartment every other week, drinking beer and getting loud until 2 in the morning. I'd usually retreat to our bedroom with noise-canceling headphones, telling myself that Marcus deserved time with his buddies. A good wife supports her husband's friendships, right? That's what my mom always said. The first real crack in my perfect picture appeared about 2 months before the wedding. I came home early from work one Tuesday because I had a migraine that made it impossible to stare at my computer screen any longer. Marcus was supposed to be at the gym, but when I walked into our apartment, I heard his voice coming from the bedroom. He was on the phone, and something about his tone made me freeze in the hallway instead of announcing myself. "Bro, I'm telling you it's going to be insane," Marcus was saying, his voice low and excited. "Ashley's planning every detail like it's a military operation. She has no idea I'm planning my own kind of celebration." He laughed at something the person on the other end said, and my stomach tightened. I pressed myself against the wall, barely breathing, straining to hear every word. Something felt wrong, deeply wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly what. "The honeymoon in Cancun, man," Marcus continued. 2 weeks of beaches and clubs. Ashley picked this all-inclusive resort that's supposed to be romantic or whatever, but I checked out the scene there. Spring break energy all year round, if you know what I mean. Another pause while he listened. "Yeah, she'll probably be passed out by 10 every night. She's been so stressed with the wedding that she's exhausted. That's when I'll hit the hotel bars. Fresh talent everywhere, and they'll never know I just got married." My hand flew to my mouth to stop the gasp that wanted to escape. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be my Marcus. The man who left me sweet notes and held me when I cried during sad movies. I must have misunderstood. Maybe he was joking around, saying outrageous things to make his friend laugh. Guys did that sometimes, didn't they? Said stupid stuff they didn't mean. Nah, she won't suspect anything, Marcus said, and his casual confidence made my blood run cold. Ashley's so trusting it's almost boring. She believes everything I tell her. I could say I'm going for a morning jog and be gone for 3 hours, and she'd just ask if I had a good workout. He laughed again, and the sound of it made me want to vomit. Look, I love her, I do. She's going to be a great wife and mom someday. But I'm only 29, Jake. I'm not ready to close up shop forever, you know. I stumbled backward toward the front door, my migraine forgotten in the tsunami of shock and betrayal crashing over me. My hands shook so badly I could barely turn the doorknob. I left the apartment as quietly as I'd entered, taking the stairs instead of the elevator because I was afraid I might run into neighbors and they'd see something was wrong on my face. The Chicago summer air felt suffocating as I walked aimlessly down our street, my mind spinning in circles. For an hour I just walked. I didn't have a destination, didn't have a plan. I kept replaying Marcus's words in my head, analyzing every syllable, trying to find a different interpretation that didn't mean what I knew it meant. Fresh talent everywhere. She won't suspect anything. I'm not ready to close up shop. The words kept stabbing me over and over, each repetition twisting the knife deeper into my chest. By the time I circled back to our apartment building, I'd made a decision. I couldn't confront him, not yet. If I did, he'd just deny everything or say I misunderstood or gaslight me into questioning what I'd clearly heard. I needed proof, real concrete evidence that I could point to when he tried to lie his way out of this. I needed to be smart about this, smarter than I'd ever been about anything in my life. I walked back into our apartment like nothing had happened. Marcus was in the kitchen making himself a sandwich, and he looked up with a smile when I came in. Hey babe, I thought you were working late tonight. His voice was warm and familiar, the same voice that had whispered I love you 1,000 times. The same voice that had just casually discussed cheating on me during our honeymoon. Migraine, I said, managing to keep my voice steady. I came home to lie down for a bit. Feeling better now though. I walked past him to get water from the fridge, not trusting myself to look directly at him. If our eyes met, I was terrified he'd see everything written on my face. The hurt, the rage, the betrayal, the heartbreak. All of it was sitting right there under my skin, threatening to explode. Poor baby, Marcus said, coming up behind me and wrapping his arms around my waist. His chin rested on my shoulder, and I felt his breath on my neck. You've been working so hard on the wedding. Maybe we should take it easy this weekend, just relax and watch movies or something. His hands rubbed my arms gently, the same touch that used to make me feel safe and loved. Now his touch made my skin crawl, but I forced myself not to pull away. That sounds nice, I heard myself say, my voice coming from somewhere far away. I turned in his arms and made myself kiss him, brief and light. His lips felt like a stranger's. How had I kissed this man 1,000 times and never seen who he really was underneath? That night, I lay awake next to Marcus while he slept peacefully, his arm thrown across my waist like always. I stared at the ceiling in the darkness, listening to his steady breathing, and plotted. I thought about calling off the wedding, about packing my things and leaving in the middle of the night. But then I thought about the deposits we'd put down, the money my parents had spent, the invitations that had already gone out to 300 people. More than that, I thought about how he'd get away with it. He'd tell everyone I was crazy, that I'd gotten cold feet and invented some story to justify backing out. His friends would support him, probably even some of mine. She just panicked, they'd say. Wedding jitters. Poor Marcus, he must be devastated. He'd play the victim, and I'd be the unstable woman who couldn't handle commitment. Well, that wasn't going to happen. If this relationship was going to end, and it absolutely was, then it would end on my terms. Marcus wanted to humiliate me, to use our honeymoon as his personal playground while I waited back at the resort like an idiot. Fine. two could play at betrayal. But I'd be better at it than he ever dreamed possible. The next day, I started planning my revenge with the same meticulous attention to detail I'd put into planning our wedding. First, I needed evidence. I couldn't just rely on the phone conversation I'd overheard. I needed something undeniable, something he couldn't explain away. I started paying closer attention to Marcus's behavior, to his phone, to his conversations with his friends. He'd gotten sloppy with his phone password. I'd always known it was his mom's birthday, but he'd never been secretive about his phone around me before. Why would he be, when I was supposedly so trusting? One night while he was in the shower, I grabbed his phone from the nightstand and started scrolling. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it twice. The group chat with Jake, Tyler, and Brad was called The Boys, and it was a goldmine of horror. I took screenshots of everything, my anger growing with each message. They'd been planning this for months, ever since we'd booked the honeymoon. Jake had cheated on his girlfriend during their Cabo trip last year and was giving Marcus advice. Tyler was sharing tips about which hotel bars had the best hunting grounds. Brad was making jokes about married life being a prison sentence and Marcus needing one last taste of freedom. But it was Marcus's messages that destroyed me. Can't wait to have some actual fun before Ashley chains me down for life. The wedding's just a show for her parents and their money anyway. One last hurrah before I'm stuck with missionary position for the next 50 years. Each message felt like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs, making me question everything about the last 4 years. How long had he felt this way? Had he ever really loved me, or was I just convenient? Was I just the safe choice, the girl you marry because she checks all the boxes while you keep hunting for excitement elsewhere? The questions spiraled in my mind, each one more painful than the last. I saved every screenshot to a hidden folder on my laptop, creating a timeline of betrayal. I also found messages to individual girls on his Instagram. Nothing too explicit, probably because he was smart enough to know Instagram messages could be screenshotted. But there were enough flirty comments and DMs to girls posting club photos to show a pattern. Looking good with a fire emoji. When are you back in Chicago? To a girl whose profile showed she lived in Miami. We should grab drinks sometime, to someone who'd liked his gym selfies. The poker nights took on new meaning. I started paying attention, really listening when his friends came over. They'd get drunk enough to forget I was in the next room, and their conversations were enlightening. They talked about Marcus's bachelor party in Vegas last month, which I hadn't attended obviously. The stories they told made it clear that what happened in Vegas definitely didn't stay there, at least not in Marcus's version of events. Remember that blonde at the blackjack table? Tyler said one night, his words slurred. Marcus, you dog, I thought you were going to marry her instead of Ashley. Everyone laughed, including Marcus. My blood boiled as I stood in the bedroom doorway where they couldn't see me, recording every word on my phone. She was something else, Marcus agreed. But you know, what Ashley doesn't know won't hurt her. That's the code, right, boys? More laughter, more clinking of beer bottles. Besides, Vegas was just practice for Cancun. I'm going to make that honeymoon count before I'm locked down forever. I had everything I needed. The screenshots, the recordings, the evidence of his character and his intentions. But I still didn't know exactly what I was going to do with it all. The wedding was 6 weeks away, then 5, then 4. Every day I went through the motions, confirming vendors and finalizing details, while inside I was hollowing out, becoming someone I didn't recognize. My friends started noticing something was off. My best friend Sarah cornered me at my bachelorette party, which I'd barely wanted to have but she'd insisted on throwing. We were at a wine bar in Lincoln Park, surrounded by women who loved me and wanted to celebrate my happiness. I felt like a fraud sitting there with my bride-to-be sash, sipping champagne and pretending everything was fine. You seem distracted, Sarah said quietly while the others were laughing at something one of my cousins said. Is everything okay? Are you having second thoughts? She squeezed my hand, her eyes full of concern. Sarah had been my friend since college, and she could read me better than anyone. For a moment I almost told her everything. The words were right there, pressing against my teeth, desperate to spill out. But I swallowed them back down. "Just stressed," I said with what I hoped was a convincing smile. "You know how wedding planning is. It's overwhelming. I couldn't tell anyone, not yet. If word got back to Marcus that I knew something, my entire plan would fall apart." "Marcus better appreciate everything you're doing for this wedding," Sarah said, a slight edge to her voice. She'd never been Marcus's biggest fan, though she'd never said anything directly negative. Just little comments here and there about how he could be self-centered sometimes, or didn't seem to prioritize you enough. I'd always defended him, made excuses, explained away his behavior. Now I wondered if Sarah had seen something I'd been blind to all along. Had everyone seen it except me? Was I the only one stupid enough to believe in Marcus's performance of devotion? The thought made me feel pathetic and angry in equal measure. How many people had watched me planning this wedding and felt sorry for me? How many knew I was walking into a disaster? 3 weeks before the wedding, I made my final decision about exactly how this would go down. I was meeting with our wedding coordinator, an efficient woman named Patricia who'd planned hundreds of Chicago weddings. We were going over the ceremony timeline, and she mentioned the part where the officiant would ask if anyone objected to the marriage. "We usually have couples remove that part nowadays," Patricia said, making a note on her tablet. "It's pretty outdated, and it just creates awkward silence. No one ever actually objects." She laughed, expecting me to agree. Instead, my mind started racing with possibilities. "Actually, I want to keep it in," I said slowly, an idea forming. "I think it's traditional and romantic. The whole speak now or forever hold your peace thing." Patricia looked mildly surprised but shrugged and made a note. That's when the full plan came together in my mind, crystallizing into something beautiful and terrible. I would let the wedding happen. I would walk down that aisle in my dress that cost $3,000. I would stand at that altar in front of everyone we knew and loved. And then, at the perfect moment, I would burn Marcus's entire life to the ground in the most public, spectacular way possible. He wanted a show. I'd give him a show that would be talked about for years. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of my life. I had to continue playing the excited bride while my insides churned with rage and hurt. I had my final dress fitting, and the seamstress cried about how beautiful I looked. My mom threw me a family shower, and I opened gifts for a future that I knew would never exist. Every smile felt like it might crack my face. Every "I can't wait" felt like swallowing glass. Marcus, meanwhile, was the picture of a happy groom. He got increasingly affectionate as the wedding approached, probably because he was excited about his upcoming freedom in Cancun. He'd kiss me goodbye in the morning and say things like, "Soon you'll be Mrs. Williams," with this big smile. I'd smile back and think about how I was going to destroy him. I spent late nights while Marcus slept, carefully editing together audio from the recordings I'd made. The phone conversation I'd overheard that first day. His comments at poker nights. The group chat messages I'd had a friend with a great voice actor read aloud. I wove it all together into a 3-minute compilation that told the complete story of Marcus's betrayal. It was damning, undeniable, and I listened to it 50 times to make sure it was perfect. Then I had to figure out how to play it at the wedding without anyone stopping me. I enlisted help from the most unexpected source, my little brother Danny. Danny was 23, worked in IT, and had always been protective of me. When I told him what I'd discovered about Marcus and what I wanted to do, his jaw clenched so tight I thought he might crack his teeth. "That piece of shit," Danny said, his hands balling into fists. "I never liked him, you know. Always thought he was too smooth, too perfect. Like he was acting." He looked at me with a mixture of anger and sadness. "I'm so sorry, sis. You deserve so much better than this. Help me make sure he gets what he deserves," I said. Together, we planned how Danny would control the sound system during the ceremony. He'd be sitting in the back row, and at my signal, he'd play the audio file through the church speakers. We practiced the timing a dozen times, making sure nothing would go wrong. The night before the wedding, I barely slept. I was staying at my parents' house, following tradition, while Marcus stayed at our apartment with his groomsmen. My mom came into my childhood bedroom around midnight and found me sitting by the window, looking out at the dark street. "Nervous?" she asked gently, sitting down next to me. She put her arm around my shoulders, and I leaned into her without speaking. "It's normal to have jitters, sweetheart. Marriage is a big step. But Marcus loves you, and you're going to have a wonderful life together." If only she knew. "Mom," I said carefully, "what would you do if you found out someone you loved had betrayed you? Really betrayed you?" I couldn't tell her what was coming, but I needed something from her. Some kind of blessing or understanding for what I was about to do. My mom was quiet for a long moment. "I'd want them to face consequences," she finally said. "Betrayal is one of the worst things you can do to someone who trusts you. It's not just about the action itself. It's about the lie it reveals. The disrespect." She squeezed my shoulder. "Why do you ask?" "Just thinking about vows," I said vaguely. "About what it means to promise yourself to someone." My mom kissed my forehead and told me to get some sleep, that tomorrow would be a big day. She had no idea how big. The wedding morning arrived gray and drizzly, typical October weather in Chicago. My bridesmaids arrived at my parents' house by 8, ready to start hair and makeup. Sarah kept giving me concerned looks, but she was busy managing everyone else's mimosas and keeping things on schedule. I went through the motions mechanically, feeling like I was watching myself from outside my body. The makeup artist did my face while I sat perfectly still, thinking about what was coming. She gave me a dramatic eye with my dress, said I looked like a princess. I looked at my reflection and saw a stranger, someone harder and colder than the Ashley who'd said yes to Marcus's proposal. That Ashley had died the day she overheard his phone call. This Ashley was someone new, someone capable of things she'd never imagined. At the church, everything was exactly as I'd planned. White roses everywhere, candles flickering, 300 guests filing into the pews. I could hear the string quartet playing as I waited in the bridal suite with my bridesmaids. Through the door, I heard the rumble of conversation, people excited to witness our union. They were about to witness something very different. My dad came to get me when it was time. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, his eyes getting misty when he saw me in my dress. "You're so beautiful, Ashley," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of you. So proud of the woman you've become." Almost broke then. Almost called the whole thing off, ran out the back door of the church in my wedding dress and never looked back. But then I thought about Marcus standing at that altar, so confident that I was his sure thing. So certain he'd gotten away with everything, that he'd have his wife and his fun too. That thought hardened my resolve. "I love you, Dad," I said, taking his arm. We lined up behind my bridesmaids in the hallway outside the sanctuary. I could hear the music shift to the processional. One by one, my bridesmaids walked down the aisle. Then it was my turn. The doors opened wide, and everyone stood. I saw 300 faces turn toward me, smiling and crying and full of happiness for this moment. I walked down that aisle with my head high, my eyes locked on Marcus. He stood at the altar looking nervous and excited, his hands clasped in front of him. His groomsmen stood beside him, including Jake and Tyler and Brad, all of them grinning like they were part of some inside joke. They had no idea what was coming. None of them did. The walk down the aisle felt endless and too short at the same time. My dad kissed my cheek when we reached the altar and placed my hand in Marcus's before taking his seat. Marcus's palm was sweaty, and he squeezed my fingers. "You look incredible," he whispered. I didn't respond, just turned to face the officiant, an older man named Reverend Peters who'd known Marcus's family for years. The ceremony began with the standard words about love and commitment and the sanctity of marriage. I barely heard them. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I kept my eyes on Reverend Peters, not trusting myself to look at Marcus or I might break down. Behind me, I could sense my mom crying happy tears. In the back, Danny waited with his finger on his phone, ready for my signal. "Marriage is not to be entered into lightly," Reverend Peters intoned, but thoughtfully and seriously, with a deep understanding of its obligations and responsibilities. Marcus nodded along, the picture of a sincere groom. I wondered if he was thinking about Cancun, about the women he planned to pick up while I slept in our honeymoon suite. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. Reverend Peters cleared his throat and said the words I'd specifically asked Patricia to keep in the ceremony. If any person here present knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. The church went silent, that awkward silence Patricia had warned me about. People shifted in their seats, waiting for it to pass so we could move on to the vows. But instead of moving on, I turned to look directly at Marcus. Our eyes met, and something in my expression must have alarmed him because his smile faltered. "Actually," I said clearly, my voice carrying through the church's speakers, "I have something to say." A confused murmur rippled through the guests. Marcus's eyes widened. "I think everyone here should know exactly who they're watching me marry before this goes any further." I looked toward the back of the church where Danny sat. Our eyes met, and I gave him the smallest nod. He pressed play on his phone, and Marcus's voice suddenly filled the church through the sound system. "The honeymoon in Cancun, man. 2 weeks of beaches and clubs. Ashley picked this all-inclusive resort that's supposed to be romantic or whatever, but I checked out the scene there. Spring break energy all year round, if you know what I mean." The church erupted. Gasps, shouts, people standing up to see what was happening. Marcus's face went from confused to horrified as he realized what was playing. He lunged toward the sound booth, but my brothers were already moving to block him. "Ashley, what the hell?" he shouted, but his voice was drowned out by his own continuing from the speakers. "She'll probably be passed out by 10 every night. She's been so stressed with the wedding that she's exhausted. That's when I'll hit the hotel bars. Fresh talent everywhere, and they'll never know I just got married." Marcus's mother screamed. Literally screamed, a sound of pure anguish that cut through all the other noise. I watched her face crumble as she listened to her son casually discussing his plan to cheat on me during our honeymoon. Marcus's father stood up, his face purple with rage, shouting something I couldn't hear over the chaos. Have you ever watched someone's entire world collapse in real time? Have you ever been the one holding the detonator? It's not as satisfying as you'd think it would be. The recording continued, playing snippets from the group chat that my friend had recorded. "Can't wait to have some actual fun before Ashley chains me down for life. The wedding's just a show for her parents and their money anyway." With each revelation, the church descended further into chaos. People were shouting, crying, some trying to leave while others pushed forward to get closer to the drama. I stood perfectly still in the center of it all, still holding my bouquet, my eyes never leaving Marcus's face. I watched him try to deny it, his mouth moving in explanations no one could hear. I watched him reach for me and I stepped back smoothly, just out of reach. His groomsmen were backing away from him like he had a contagious disease. Jake looked like he might throw up. When the recording finally ended, the silence that followed was somehow louder than all the chaos had been. Everyone stared at Marcus, waiting for him to say something, to defend himself, to explain. But what could he possibly say? There was no explaining away his own voice, his own words, his own casual cruelty. "Ashley," Marcus finally managed, his voice shaking. "This isn't what it sounds like. I was joking around with the guys. It was just talk. I would never actually." He took a step toward me, his hand outstretched. "Baby, please. You know me. You know I love you." "I thought I knew you," I said, and my voice came out steady and cold. But the Marcus I knew was a fiction. The real you is what everyone just heard. The real you is a man who thought his trusting fiancé was boring, who was already planning to cheat before we even said our vows. I looked past him to his parents, his family, all of them staring at their golden boy with horror and disappointment. "You wanted one last hurrah before you were stuck with me?" I continued, my voice getting stronger. "You wanted fresh talent in Cancun while I was sleeping off wedding stress? Well, congratulations, Marcus. You're free. Completely free. Because there is no way in hell I'm marrying you today or any other day. The church exploded again, but this time it was different. This time people were standing and applauding. Not everyone, not Marcus's family or closest friends, but enough people that the sound echoed off the walls. My friends, my family, even some people I barely knew were clapping for me. For my courage, for my revenge, for my refusal to be humiliated in silence. I turned to face our guests, still holding my bouquet like a weapon. Thank you all for coming today, I said, projecting my voice the way I'd learned in college theater. I'm sorry you traveled and took time out of your lives for this. But I couldn't let Marcus win. I couldn't let him use me and disrespect me and think he'd gotten away with it. My mom was sobbing in the front row, but when our eyes met, she was nodding. Proudly, fiercely nodding. My dad looked stunned, but he started clapping too, slow and deliberate. Sarah was crying and clapping simultaneously, and I saw her mouth, "I'm so proud of you," from her position in the bridal party. There's going to be a party at the reception venue, I announced. The food is paid for, the bar is open. I'm not going to waste my parents' money or let Marcus's betrayal ruin what could be a great Saturday night for all of you. Please go to the reception. Celebrate my freedom. Celebrate the fact that I found out who Marcus really was before I legally tied myself to him. I started walking back down the aisle, still in my wedding dress, still holding my bouquet. People moved aside to let me pass, and I could feel their eyes on me. Some looked sympathetic, some looked shocked, some looked absolutely delighted by the drama. I didn't care. I held my head high and walked out of that church like the queen I was. Behind me I could hear Marcus shouting, arguing with someone, probably his father. I heard his mother wailing about embarrassment and shame. I heard Reverend Peters trying to restore order and failing spectacularly. But I didn't look back. I'd spent enough of my life looking at Marcus. I was done. My bridesmaids caught up with me in the parking lot. Sarah grabbed me in a fierce hug, her tears soaking into my dress. "That was the most badass thing I've ever seen," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Ashley, oh my God. I can't believe you actually did that." "Did you know?" one of my other bridesmaids asked. "Did you know before today?" I nodded, and they all exploded with questions. How long had I known? Why hadn't I called off the wedding? How did I get that recording? I answered what I could while we stood there in the drizzle, still dressed in wedding finery. My parents emerged from the church, my mom running to me in her heels, her makeup ruined from crying. "Baby, are you okay?" she asked, grabbing my face in her hands. "What did that boy do to you?" I told her everything then, right there in the parking lot. About the phone call, the screenshots, the recordings, all of it. My dad's jaw clenched tighter with every word. "I wanted to kill him," my dad said when I finished. "When I heard his voice on those speakers saying those things about you, I wanted to climb up there and strangle him." He pulled me into a hug, and I finally let myself cry a little. "I'm proud of you," he said into my hair. For being strong enough to do that. For not letting him get away with it. We decided to go to the reception as planned. I wasn't going to hide or feel ashamed when I'd done nothing wrong. I'd been betrayed, but I'd also been smart and strong, and I'd protected myself in the best way I knew how. So I got into the limo that was supposed to take Marcus and me to our reception as husband and wife, and my bridesmaids piled in with me instead. The reception venue was the Chicago Botanical Gardens, absolutely beautiful even in the October rain. When we arrived, a few guests were already there, having left the church immediately. More filed in over the next 30 minutes until maybe 200 of our 300 guests showed up. Marcus didn't come. Neither did his parents or most of his family and friends. But almost everyone on my side came. And even some of his distant relatives who apparently weren't fans of his anyway. We danced and drank and celebrated. It turned into the weirdest, best party I'd ever been to. People kept coming up to me saying how brave I was, how Marcus didn't deserve me, how they'd always known something was off about him. Some older women told me stories of their own heartbreaks and betrayals, toasting to my courage. My aunt got drunk and gave a toast about how this was better than any wedding because I'd married myself, married my own integrity and self-respect. Sarah stayed by my side most of the night, making sure I was okay. "Are you really okay?" she asked me during a quiet moment. We were sitting at the head table that should have been for Marcus and me, looking out at our friends dancing to what was supposed to be our wedding playlist. "I will be," I said honestly. "Right now I'm numb, angry, relieved, heartbroken. All of it at once." I took a sip of champagne. "But I know I made the right choice. If I'd just called off the wedding quietly, he would have made me the villain. This way everyone knows exactly who he is." The party went late into the night. At one point, my brothers started a conga line that snaked through the whole venue. My mom slow danced with my dad while crying happy sad tears. The photographer I'd hired, bless him, kept taking pictures of everything, documenting this strange, cathartic celebration. I'd definitely be getting my money's worth from those photos. Around midnight, I changed out of my wedding dress and into a simple black dress I'd brought for going away outfit. Several bridesmaids helped me, all of us cramped in the bathroom, laughing about how insane this day had been. I looked at my wedding dress hanging on the back of the door, $3,000 of silk and lace that I'd worn for less than 2 hours. I felt nothing looking at it. It was just a costume for a role I was no longer playing. When I emerged in my black dress, a cheer went up from the guests who were still there. Someone had changed the music to "I Will Survive," and everyone started dancing again, pulling me into the center of the floor. I danced with my dad, with my brothers, with Sarah and my bridesmaids. I danced like I was celebrating a funeral for the version of myself that had believed in Marcus. The night finally ended around 2 in the morning. I said goodbye to the last guests, hugging people I hadn't seen in years, exchanging phone numbers and promises to stay in touch. My parents drove me back to their house, and I collapsed into my childhood bed still wearing the black dress. Sleep came surprisingly easily, the exhaustion of adrenaline and emotion finally catching up with me. I woke up the next morning to my phone exploding with notifications. Apparently, someone had recorded the church confrontation and posted it online. The video had gone viral overnight, spreading across TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. "Bride exposes cheating groom at altar" was trending. I had thousands of messages from strangers, mostly supportive, some critical, all of them having opinions about my life and my choices. The video had captured everything. My calm demeanor as I stood at the altar. Marcus's voice echoing through the church. The moment his face changed from confusion to horror. His mother's scream. Me walking back down the aisle alone with my head held high. It was intimate and devastating and completely public now, available for the entire world to watch and judge. Part of me was mortified. My worst moment, my deepest betrayal, was now entertainment for millions of strangers. But another part of me felt validated. Marcus couldn't control the narrative now. He couldn't tell people I was crazy or that I'd overreacted. The evidence was right there in video form, undeniable and permanent. My mom brought me coffee in bed, something she hadn't done since I was sick as a kid. She sat on the edge of my bed and stroked my hair while I scrolled through comments on the viral video. "You're famous," she said with a sad little laugh. "My daughter, the internet sensation." "I didn't mean for it to go this public," I admitted. "I just wanted the people in that church to know. To see him exposed in front of everyone who mattered." I paused on a comment from someone saying I was their hero for not settling. Now the whole world is watching. Over the next few days, the story exploded even further. News outlets picked it up. I got interview requests from morning shows, podcasts, magazines, everyone wanting to hear my story in my own words. I declined most of them, but I did give one interview to a local Chicago news station, just to set the record straight and tell my side fully. Marcus tried to contact me hundreds of times. Calls, texts, emails, even showing up at my parents' house until my dad threatened to call the police. His messages swung wildly between apologetic and angry. He'd say he was sorry, that he'd made terrible mistakes, that he wanted to make it right. Then in the next message he'd call me vindictive and cruel, say I destroyed his life over locker room talk, accuse me of being a manipulative psycho who'd planned this humiliation from the start. His friends, predictably, tried to defend him on social media. Jake posted something about privacy and taking jokes out of context. Tyler wrote a long caption about cancel culture and how one mistake shouldn't define someone's whole character. Brad just went silent, probably smart enough to know anything he said would make it worse. But the internet wasn't having any of their excuses. They got ripped apart in the comments, called enablers and accomplices. The most surprising messages came from other women. Women who dated Marcus before me reached out to say they'd experienced similar behavior, that he'd cheated or lied or made them feel crazy for being suspicious. One ex-girlfriend told me he'd maintained a whole secret relationship with her while he was supposedly focusing on himself between relationships. Another said he'd stolen money from her and never paid it back. The Marcus I'd thought I knew was apparently just one performance in a long series of cons. I spent the next few weeks sorting out the practical aftermath. I got my engagement ring appraised and sold it, using the money to pay back my parents for some of the wedding costs. I threw away everything Marcus had ever given me, bags and bags of stuff I couldn't stand to look at anymore. Cards, photos, the little notes I'd saved, all of it went in the trash. The apartment we'd shared together was the hardest part. Technically both our names were on the lease, but there was no way I could live there anymore. Every corner held memories that were now poisoned. The kitchen where I'd overheard his phone call. The bedroom where I'd lain awake plotting revenge. The living room where his friends had laughed about his planned infidelity. I moved back in with my parents temporarily while I figured out my next steps. Marcus, I heard through mutual friends, had moved back in with his parents. His mom was apparently still not speaking to him. His father had made him take a leave of absence from work because the scandal was affecting the company's reputation. His friends still hung out with him, but the dynamic had shifted. Everyone knew what he'd done now, knew what kind of person he really was beneath the charm. The viral video meant that Marcus couldn't just move on and pretend nothing happened. Everywhere he went in Chicago, people recognized him as that guy from the wedding video. Someone told me he'd been approached at a bar by a woman who wanted to buy him a drink, but when he seemed interested, she revealed it was actually a glass of water because that's all cheaters deserve. He'd apparently left immediately. I didn't feel as victorious as I'd imagined I would. Yes, Marcus had faced consequences. Yes, he'd been publicly humiliated the way he'd planned to privately humiliate me. But I also felt hollowed out, grieving not just the relationship but the future I'd imagined. The house in the suburbs, the 3 kids, the golden retriever, all of it was gone. I had to rebuild my entire vision of my life from scratch. Sarah helped me look for apartments, something small and affordable that I could manage on my salary alone. We found a 1-bedroom in Wicker Park. Nothing fancy, but it had good light and hardwood floors, and it was completely mine. No shared lease, no memories, no ghosts. I signed the papers feeling both terrified and liberated. Moving into that apartment felt like the real start of my new life. I furnished it slowly, deliberately, choosing everything myself without having to compromise or consider someone else's taste. I hung art that Marcus would have hated. I bought a bright teal couch that he would have said was too bold. I made it exactly the space I wanted it to be. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into projects, stayed late, volunteered for extra assignments. My boss had seen the video, everyone had, but she was tactful enough not to bring it up directly. She just quietly gave me more responsibilities, more chances to prove myself, and I was grateful for the distraction. My career started taking off in ways it hadn't when I'd been splitting my energy between work and wedding planning. About 2 months after what should have been my wedding day, I went on my first date. Nothing serious, just coffee with a guy Sarah knew from work. He was nice, funny, respectful, and I felt absolutely nothing. No spark, no interest, no desire to see him again. I realized I wasn't ready, might not be ready for a long time, and that was okay. I started therapy, something I should have done years ago, honestly. My therapist helped me unpack not just the Marcus situation but patterns in my life. My tendency to ignore red flags. My habit of making myself smaller to accommodate other people. My fear of being alone that had made me cling to a relationship that wasn't serving me. It was painful work but necessary. The viral video eventually faded from the trending pages, replaced by new scandals and dramas. But it never fully went away. It lived permanently on the internet, a digital record of the worst day of my life. Sometimes I'd see it resurface in compilations or reaction videos. Sometimes people would recognize me on the street, and I'd see the moment of realization in their eyes. I learned to live with being that bride to strangers. Marcus kept trying to reach out periodically. Text on my birthday. An email on what would have been our anniversary. A voicemail on Christmas saying he missed me and wished things had been different. I never responded. There was nothing he could say that would change anything. The man I'd loved had never really existed, and the real Marcus had proven himself unworthy of my time or energy. I heard through the grapevine that he'd started dating someone new about 4 months after our non-wedding. Part of me felt sorry for her, whoever she was. But I'd done my part by exposing him publicly. If she'd chosen to date him anyway, knowing his history, that was her decision to make. I'd learned the hard way that you can't save people from their own choices. My friends rallied around me in ways I hadn't expected. Sarah organized weekly brunches that slowly expanded to include other women, some I knew and some I didn't, all of us supporting each other through breakups and heartbreaks and life transitions. I found my people, my real people, the ones who showed up when things got hard instead of just when things were pretty and Instagram-worthy. About 6 months after the wedding that wasn't, I started dating someone new. His name was David, and he was a teacher at a school where my company did some pro bono marketing work. He was patient and kind and utterly transparent about his life and feelings. He knew about my viral video, obviously everyone did. But he saw it as evidence of my strength rather than a red flag about my character. David didn't push me for commitment or pressure me to move faster than I was ready for. When I had panic attacks about trust, he talked me through them. When I got triggered by little things that reminded me of Marcus, he gave me space. He proved through consistent action, not just words, that he was someone safe to open my heart to again. It wasn't perfect. I had moments of paranoia where I'd check his phone or question his motives. I had nightmares about walking down an aisle again. But slowly, painfully, I learned to trust again. Not blindly this time, but with my eyes wide open, watching for red flags and believing them when they appeared. David earned my trust inch by inch, day by day, never once making me feel foolish for being cautious. A year after the wedding, I went back to Riverside Chapel for the first time. Not for a wedding, just walking past it on my way to meet Sarah for dinner. I stood outside looking at the building, remembering that day in vivid detail. The rain, the flowers, Marcus's face when he realized what I was doing. I waited for the pain to hit me like it always had before. But this time I just felt tired. And maybe a little proud. I'd survived the worst thing I could imagine. I'd been betrayed and humiliated. And instead of crumbling, I'd fought back. I'd refused to be a victim of Marcus's selfishness and lies. Yes, it had cost me the future I'd planned, but it had also freed me from a life built on false foundations. The internet never fully forgot about my video. Every few months it would resurface, usually in compilations of savage wedding moments or ultimate revenge stories. New people would discover it and have opinions. Some called me a hero. Some called me vindictive. Some debated whether what I'd done was justified or if I'd gone too far. I stopped reading the comments after a while. Their opinions didn't matter. I knew my truth. Marcus eventually moved away from Chicago. Someone told me he'd taken a job in Denver, probably trying to escape his reputation. I didn't keep tabs on him actively, but information had a way of filtering back to me through mutual connections. He'd gotten engaged again, apparently, to someone he'd known for less than a year. I hoped for her sake he'd changed, but I doubted it. Men like Marcus didn't change, they just got better at hiding. My career continued to flourish. I got promoted to senior coordinator, then to manager. I built a reputation for being strategic and unflappable, someone who stayed calm under pressure. My colleagues had no idea how much that pressure at work paled in comparison to planning your own public revenge while pretending everything was fine. After Marcus, professional stress felt manageable. 2 years after the wedding, David proposed. We were hiking in Colorado, nowhere near Chicago or any church, just the two of us in the mountains. He didn't make a big production of it, didn't hire photographers or plan an elaborate surprise. He just stopped on the trail, told me he loved me, and asked if I wanted to build a life together. I said yes, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. We got married at the courthouse with just our parents and closest friends present. No big wedding, no 300 guests, no church or reception hall. Just simple vows exchanged in front of people who truly loved us. I wore a simple white dress that cost $200, and I'd never felt more beautiful or more sure of anything in my life. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled the Marcus situation. If I wish I'd just called off the wedding quietly and moved on with dignity. The honest answer is no. I don't regret it. Maybe that makes me petty or vindictive, but Marcus deserved to face consequences for his actions. He deserved to have his carefully constructed nice guy image shattered in the most public way possible. Would I do it again the same way if I could go back? Probably not. The viral aspect of it, having strangers dissect my trauma for entertainment, that part one wouldn't choose again. But exposing Marcus in front of everyone who knew us, making sure his friends and family saw who he really was. I'd do that part again in a heartbeat. The wedding video occasionally still affects my life in unexpected ways. I've been recognized during job interviews, which is always awkward. David's family knew who I was before they met me, which made our first dinner together weird. But mostly life moved on. Most days I don't think about Marcus or that day at all. I'm too busy living my actual life, not the performance of a life I'd almost settled for. I learned things from that experience that I carry with me always. I learned that trusting your gut is more important than giving people the benefit of the doubt. I learned that sometimes the kind thing to do for yourself is the thing that looks cruel from the outside. I learned that you can survive having your worst moment broadcast to millions of strangers and come out stronger on the other side. The other day, I ran into Jake, Marcus's friend from the group chat, at a coffee shop downtown. We made eye contact, and I watched him debate whether to say something or pretend he hadn't seen me. Finally, he came over looking uncomfortable. "Ashley," he said. "How are you?" "I'm great," I told him honestly. "Really great, actually." There was an awkward pause where he seemed to struggle for words. "How's Marcus?" I asked, not because I cared but because I was curious what he'd say. "He's okay," Jake said vaguely. "Still in Denver." Another pause. "Look, I know this is probably weird, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. For my part in all that. The group chat, the encouragement. It was wrong and you didn't deserve it." He looked genuinely remorseful, which surprised me. "Thank you," I said. "That means something." We didn't talk long after that, just exchanged pleasantries and went our separate ways. But his apology sat with me. Maybe some people did learn and grow. Maybe there was hope for personal evolution even after you'd done shitty things. Not for Marcus, probably, but for some people. I think about the Ashley who walked down that aisle sometimes. She was brave in a way I'm still proud of, even if her methods were extreme. She refused to be silent about her pain. She demanded accountability in a world that often lets men off the hook for their bad behavior. She chose herself when it would have been easier to choose peace and pretend nothing was wrong. But I'm also grateful I'm not her anymore. That Ashley was powered by rage and hurt, by the need to prove a point and protect herself. Current Ashley is powered by peace and purpose. I don't need revenge anymore because I'm not being wronged. I'm not constantly vigilant for betrayal because I'm with someone who shows up honestly every day. The wedding dress is still in a box somewhere at my parents' house. My mom keeps asking if I want to sell it or donate it, but I can't quite bring myself to deal with it yet. Maybe someday I'll be ready to let it go completely. Or maybe it'll stay in that box forever. A relic of a life I didn't end up living. Either way is fine with me. 3 years after the viral wedding, I got a message request on Instagram from a woman I didn't know. Her message said, I just wanted to thank you. I saw your video when I was planning my wedding and having doubts about my fiancé. Your courage to trust your instincts gave me permission to trust mine. I called off my wedding, and it was the best decision I ever made. Messages like that made everything worth it. People often ask me what I'd tell someone in a similar situation, someone who'd discovered their partner's betrayal right before their wedding. My answer is always the same. Trust yourself. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't ignore red flags because you've already sent the invitations or bought the dress or told everyone this is happening. Better to face embarrassment and disappointment now than lock yourself into a life built on lies. And if you do decide to blow up your wedding, really commit to it. Half measures won't protect you. Marcus would have gaslit me and twisted the story if I'd given him any room to do so. By making the evidence public and undeniable, I took away his power to reshape the narrative. That's not advice for everyone, but it was right for me. David knows the whole story, obviously. He's watched the video, though only once and only because I offered. He says he's grateful to Marcus in a weird way, because Marcus's betrayal freed me up to eventually meet him. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I understand what he means. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us clear space for better things we couldn't have imagined. My relationship with my parents deepened after everything. They saw me at my most vulnerable and most fierce, and their support never wavered. My dad still says that walking me down the aisle that day, not knowing what I was about to do, was one of the most surreal experiences of his life. But he respects that I handled it my way, on my terms. Sarah is still my best friend, and she's the godmother to the daughter David and I had last year. When I told her I was pregnant, she cried and said, "This is your happy ending. After everything, you got your happy ending." But I corrected her. It's not an ending at all. It's just life, continuing, evolving, becoming something new and unexpected in mine. The little girl sleeping in the next room will someday probably see her mother's viral video. The internet is forever after all. I've thought about what I'll tell her when she's old enough to ask. I'll tell her the truth. That her mom once loved someone who didn't deserve her. That she found out before it was too late. That she chose herself, loudly and publicly, even when it was scary. I'll tell her that sometimes being kind to yourself looks mean to other people, and that's okay. I'll teach her to trust her instincts, to believe red flags when she sees them, to never set herself on fire to keep someone else warm. I'll show her that you can survive public humiliation and heartbreak and come out the other side stronger and happier than you ever imagined possible. Marcus's voice still echoes sometimes in quiet moments, though less and less as time passes. Ashley's so trusting it's almost boring. Maybe I was boring to him. Maybe my trust and loyalty and love weren't exciting enough for someone who needed the chase and the validation of conquest. But I've learned that boring isn't bad. Steady isn't shameful. Trust is a gift, and if someone treats it carelessly, that's a them problem, not a you problem. The story of my almost wedding has taken on a life of its own beyond me now. It's been discussed in think pieces about gender dynamics and revenge and social media culture. It's been used as a cautionary tale about both infidelity and public shaming, depending on who's doing the analysis. I've stopped trying to control how people interpret it. They're going to think what they think regardless of my input. What matters to me is that I know my truth. I know I did what I needed to do to protect myself and expose someone who was planning to hurt me. I know I came through it stronger and wiser and more careful about who I let into my heart. I know I built a real life with real love after the fake life with fake love fell apart. Every October 13th, the anniversary of the wedding, I do something nice for myself. This year I'll probably go get a massage or take myself out to a fancy dinner, or buy myself flowers. It's my way of honoring the woman I was that day, standing at that altar with her heart pounding and her resolve unwavering. She deserves to be remembered and celebrated. So here's what I want you to take from my story. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Don't wait for more evidence. Don't give them chances to explain it away. Trust your gut because it's usually right. And if you do find yourself in a situation where you've been betrayed, remember that you have options. You don't have to suffer in silence. You don't have to protect someone who wouldn't protect you. Maybe your response won't be as dramatic as mine. Maybe you'll quietly walk away and rebuild. Maybe you'll seek revenge in smaller, more private ways. Maybe you'll forgive and try to work through it. All of those are valid choices depending on your situation. But whatever you do, choose yourself. Protect yourself. Believe that you deserve better than someone who lies to your face and plots behind your back. The other thing I've learned is that healing isn't linear. 3 years later, I still have moments where the betrayal hurts fresh and sharp. I still sometimes wonder what our kids would have looked like, what our life would have been if Marcus had been who I thought he was. But those moments pass faster now, and they don't define my days anymore. Mostly I just feel grateful. Grateful I found out when I did. Grateful I had the courage to act. Grateful for the life I'm living now. Looking back, I think the moment I'm most proud of isn't the confrontation itself. It's the moment after, when I walked back down that aisle alone. I could have run, could have collapsed in tears, could have let the whole thing break me right there in front of everyone. But I held my head up. I walked slowly and deliberately. I refused to let Marcus see me destroyed even though I was destroying him. That took more strength than the revenge itself. If you're reading this and you're in a relationship where something feels off, where your partner's words don't match their actions, where you find yourself making excuses for behavior that makes you uncomfortable, please listen to that feeling. Don't be like the Ashley who overheard that phone call and then spent 2 more months pretending everything was fine. Be brave enough to ask the hard questions and face the hard answers right away. And if you're reading this after a betrayal, after having your trust shattered by someone you loved, I want you to know it gets better. Not quickly, not easily, but it does get better. The person who hurt you doesn't get to write the ending of your story. You do. You get to decide what comes next, who you become, how you move forward. That power is yours, and no one can take it from you. Would I change anything about my wedding day if I could go back? Honestly, maybe the timing. Maybe I would have exposed Marcus a week before instead of at the actual ceremony. Saved my parents some money and our guests some drama. But the core choice, the decision to make his betrayal public knowledge. Well, I wouldn't change that. He earned every second of that humiliation, and I earned my moment of taking back power. The viral video will outlive me probably. Long after I'm gone, someone somewhere will stumble across "Bride exposes cheating groom" and watch my worst day for entertainment. That used to bother me more than it does now. Let them watch. Let them learn from my experience. Let them see what standing up for yourself looks like even when it's messy and public and unconventional. There are worse legacies to leave behind. So that's my story. The wedding that became a mic drop heard around the world. The relationship that imploded spectacularly in front of 300 witnesses and millions of strangers. The betrayal that taught me more about myself than any self-help book ever could. The day everything fell apart and I learned I was strong enough to survive the falling. I'm curious. Have you ever had to make a choice between protecting someone else's reputation and protecting yourself? Have you ever discovered something that made you question everything you thought you knew about your relationship? And if you did, what did you do? Did you confront it privately, or did you burn it all down? I'd love to know because sometimes I still wonder if I'm the only one who chose chaos over silence. Revenge over quiet dignity. What would you have done in my position? Would you have been brave enough or crazy enough to do what I did?